Hello, everyone, and welcome. Episode number 92 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am one of your hosts, Emerson, and as always, I am joined by my co host, Anomaly.
Hello.
And this week we're playing a little bit of catch up because we didn't have an episode last week. So we've got news from the last 2 weeks, which means we've got a lot of ground to cover. Um, Thankfully, this past week was Thanksgiving, which also meant that there was not a lot of news because the entirety of Blizzard had the week off. So
Yeah.
it's kind of just 1 week of news, but over 2 weeks. So that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, exactly. So how was your Thanksgiving, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. My family surprised me. Like I found out on Tuesday night, that they had moved the Thanksgiving celebrations from Thursday to Friday. Um,
Oh,
which was fun to find out so late, especially because I raid on Friday normally.
yeah.
We had already been planning to do like an alt raid on Friday because we had a bunch of people that were going to be out of town visiting family.
Uh-huh.
But I had signed up for that because I thought we were doing stuff on Thursday. So I had to go back and be like, hey, I am not actually signed up for this alt raid. Sorry.
Yeah. Gotta pull up last minute. Nice. Yeah, always last minute plan changing are always fun. Always a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah. How,
Oh.
how was yours?
It was good other than my kids got me really sick. So like I guess that's the reason we didn't have the podcast last weekend was like my entire family here was really sick and I was okay. But I was taking care of them and then yeah, I think Monday, Tuesday started feeling a little bad and then it's just been a constant like a little bit of sickness. So I'm starting to feel a little bit better today, but
Good.
yeah, I spent most of Thanksgiving sick driving
That's
back and
less
forth
good.
from yeah, driving back to New Jersey to eat with the family. So
Yo, Izzy. Yeah.
yeah. What a greatest state in the union. Don't No one can talk bad about it unless you're from New Jersey, and then it's awful, just in general.
I've never heard anybody say good things about Jersey.
Yeah, no one ever will. It's not. It's yeah, it's New Jersey. Um, but cool. So yeah, so I mean, it sounds like we just had a pretty light. I mean, I didn't raid this week. I think you didn't, other than that alt raid, nothing really going on. So maybe
Yeah.
we jump right into sort of the news, which was very light.
Yeah, there's some hot fixes that happened that we are going to skip. They're not super relevant to monks. They're not super relevant to raiders. Like unless you're a rogue, they really don't matter that much.
Exactly.
So we are gonna hit on a couple of things though before we get into our main topic, which I guess I kind of brushed over. Our main topic is going to be the Morgan Day interview and then some discussion about the tier sets and raid details that got announced. Um,
Yep.
so before we get into that, you wanted to talk about the Murloc thing.
Yes. So Blizzard released basically a couple new cosmetics, and the main one was these Murlocs that essentially you can transmog onto your cloak, and it's like a little baby Murloc in a shell that sort of follows you around, and it's like animated and it does stuff. I think it hides in its shell when you go in combat. It's
That's
super
cool.
super cute. Yeah. It's actually so I think you can purchase it like directly from the Blizzard store. But then you can also if you have a 6-month sub,
You just get it for
it
free.
you just get it for having that 6-month
Yeah,
sub.
I think I have it
Um
because of the 6 month sub. I didn't. I
yeah,
definitely didn't buy it. My goal is reserved for paying for raid expenses.
exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so this was something they released out of the blue. It's really cool. It sort of hit. I know we're probably not gonna spend much time on it, but it hit at the same day as the whole larger story from Activision Blizzard about some of the stuff about their CEO and what he knew about some of the harassment stuff
Yep.
that happened. So it didn't hit right at the right time, which sucks timing wise because I bet you they had this scheduled for weeks.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
There's
but it is
also
cool. It is really nice.
there's also the there's another transmog set that is also went up at the same day, and this got some people really annoyed because it looks really neat. It looks like a really nice cloth set. People are like, "Why isn't this a tier set? Why does this look so different?
Yeah.
Why isn't this what we get from Eternity's End?" Come to find out that what they actually showed for the tier sets in the preview video were like the normal or heroic versions. So the mythic versions have a lot more going on anyway. Um,
Yeah.
which I understand. Like most people are heroic raiders or normal raiders anyway, so I guess that's the more accurate one. But I don't think the reaction to this transmog set would have been nearly as bad if they had shown the mythic version of the set in that video, because the mythic
Exactly.
version of the sets do look significantly better. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, they do. So yeah, it'll be good to pick up those. But yeah, this was the second, I think, yeah, the second sort of transmoggy thing they put out. Um, which was, I mean, it looks very different. Looks really cool. The animations on it look really nice. So hopefully
yeah,
this is sort of the direction they're taking a lot of the tier sets coming out. So
yeah. I still
um,
have the transmog thing from the Shadowlands pre-purchase that I never went and did. So,
oh
because
really?
you had to like go and like grind the whatever in order to actually unlock it. I just never did
Yeah.
it.
It's from like the mount thing, right? Yeah. Doesn't the quest
Yeah,
come from the mount, like the time whatever lord people? Is that the right one, or is that
yeah.
is that
I
BFA?
think
Yeah, I don't remember.
I just
It's too
remember going
much.
people going and farming dinosaurs in Dulazar in
Oh,
order
yep,
to
yep.
like because it was just a fast respawn.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, so new transmogs, which are cool. Murlocs, super cute. Huge fan of those. So yeah, so that was a cool thing they dropped last week. And the other thing that happened last week was Season of the Mastery went live. So this was Blizzard sort of reimagining, or not reimagining maybe, but it's sort of re-releasing Classic on sort of a seasonal basis. This first one was called Season of the Mastery. Basically, it'll run a full year. And has a bunch of changes. I think they've announced, or they talked about a bunch of changes to a lot of the raid fights. The biggest thing though is they've given you sort of a huge increase in your quest XP and your dungeon XP too, so that you sort of speeds up the leveling process to get to the end game. And then they're releasing each phase. The original phases come back. They release I think every 2 months or every 2.5 months. I think something like that. So
Yeah,
just like a sped up season. Sort of WoW, which so I've played probably about like 3 or 4 hours of it, and I made it to level 12, which is
that's
actually
pretty
pretty
good
speedy.
for classic leveling. Yeah,
Yeah, pretty speedy. So no, it's fun. I mean, like the XP is faster, which was like
yeah,
my biggest complaint. But the game still feels like WoW,
like
like
classic
classic
WoW.
WoW.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
so
really glad that they didn't otherwise touch the leveling. Like I think the XP thing is good. Shoving more XP into the quest is gonna feel good for people.
yeah.
Um, but also, you know, there's something really special about the way classic leveling works that retail just doesn't capture. So I'm glad that they kind of left it alone to be its own thing.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah,
meaning
it's definitely
to play Season of Mastery. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, no, you're fine. No, I mean, like leveling wise, I think the biggest thing that the XP does is that it smooths any of the grinding, and then also it puts
Right.
you slightly ahead of the curve, just based on the fact that the quests give more, and so you're still getting that grind XP, you're still getting
Yeah.
like the kill XP, right? But you're going to be
Yeah.
slightly ahead, so you're not going to be doing like level 12 quests. Like the quests that I have now at level 12, I'm still doing like nines and tens, which
Yeah.
are slightly ahead, but, like, it makes it easier so I can, like, walk into
It's
areas and not feel like I'm gonna die.
it's
Like
a little bit less like, so the thing that I ran into a lot in classic on my druid was, you would clear out the quest in the town and you go and look at your quest log, and all of the quests would be like yellow and red.
yep.
And that persisted honestly all the way until um probably like the mid 30s, at which point I just had a bunch of random quests from like Duskwood and Stranglethorn Vale that I hadn't done yet that turned to green.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so
and
so it
and like the
definitely
yellow ones would be like halfway across the world.
yeah, so you could, like, loop back at that point because you've, like,
Yeah,
essentially unlocked enough of the world, so yeah, to, like, go back and do some of those lower quests, so no, yeah, so, I mean, I think that's the nice part, like, I am still pretty early, but like I said, got quickly out of I leveled a troll shaman, so it was quickly out of, like, even, like, the starter area for orcs and trolls,
yeah,
and was on my way, so, it was pretty crowded, so I didn't level day of, I leveled actually the Friday and Saturday,
yeah.
before. So like that the end of that week, so last week, and it was still pretty crowded. I mean, it seems like a lot of the folks that are doing this aren't going to be like the world first like type folks,
Yeah.
or like the
Yeah.
tryhards, I guess you could
I mean,
say.
we talked about this last time, right? Right? Like
Yeah.
the people that were doing speedruns and stuff were just not super. It didn't sound like they were super interested in this.
No, no, no. So like that the type of guilds are going to stick with, I think, TBC and continue that speed running thing from a raid perspective. But no, I think this is going to be more like people that just really love classic WoW and love the sort of like idea of like leveling up, getting the cool drops, like focusing on that sort of part of the game.
Yeah.
So um it's interesting. It's interesting. So
Yeah.
um
I've been meaning to check it out. I might level a hunter this time. I just haven't quite had time. Um, well,
yeah.
I say that I spent like 12 hours this weekend working on like leveling my hunter using the anniversary buff on retail and then gearing that up. Um, but all the by the way, all the catch up gear that they added in 915 is actually like really good. Like being able to go to the vendor in Orthia and buy specific slots at eye level 200 and then rank them up to 220 with uh,
Oh yeah.
cataloged research. It's actually super good. Wow.
That that and the amount of catalog research you get, like
Yeah.
I've been doing Korthia on my shaman just because it's sort
Yeah.
of one of the classes that I'll play.
I actually
I
went
think
and
in
hit
a lot of
rank
our
6 on my monk. So I was
oh, you
doing,
did?
I went and did um, weekly quests. I was gonna work on. So I found out that you had to have Exalted with Death's Advance in order to buy the sockets with Soul Cinders.
Yep.
I have loads of Soul Cinders, like, so I was just gonna buy sockets with that. So I was like, okay, I'm almost to Exalted. I'm like 4K rep off of Exalted. I'll go and I'll finish that rep. And in the process of doing the weekly for that, I had like 12,000 cataloged research that I got, and was like, oh,
Jesus.
I could just I wasn't even trying. I was like, I was not even trying. I have all of this research that put me up another like 8,000 rep um on the archivists. So I was just like, wait, I can just finish this. I
Yeah.
that that was
It's
huge.
ridiculous. Like the heirloom item that you get that like basically doubles your rep from research is
That's
just
also huge.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean like I've been doing like I said, I've been doing my shaman, been basically averaging like 1,000 research every day just by doing the quests and then doing the chests. Right? Like the four
Yeah,
chests in the shadow realm. And like that's it. It takes all of like maybe 20, 30 minutes. And
yeah,
yeah, just been sort of pumping a bunch of that and then been leveling up all those items. So
yeah,
I'm at the point now where I think I'm missing like the items I have left to upgrade are items that are DOM sockets. So like I've been
yeah,
holding off using items on that, but like I might just do it because like I need a DOM socket, right? So
yeah. I mean, flip
um
side, I did LFR on that hunter. I did almost every boss, and I got like one item that was one of the slots I had already bought and upgraded an item.
oh
Um,
no.
and LFR is only like 213.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really low. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
it was bad.
funny. That sucks. Yeah. So no, but no, in general, I mean the catch up gear is nice. And then yeah, like Season of the Mastery seems like something I'm probably gonna jump between that and like maybe a couple other games as I sort
Yeah,
of go through the holidays. But no, it seems to be fun, just sort of slowly level, go back through that again, get to
yeah,
60, maybe do a couple raids. So
yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. Um,
All right, we've got a question from
so
somebody in
cool.
chat that I think is a good one to hit on before we get into our main topic. So Berthier asked, "Hi, fellow Mistweaver friend, because I'm not a Mistweaver. Hi, Anam. Do
Everyone's a
you
misweaver.
think, do you think PTR is going to go live this reset?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it
so.
probably would have been ready the week before Thanksgiving. I think the
I think they
what
just
ended up
didn't want to
happening.
put it up the week of
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, basically. Like putting it up Friday
Yeah.
before Thanksgiving when everybody is going to be out of town the next week is just like PTR is going to be up and going to be like 3/4 broken, and you're not going to get anything
Yeah.
useful from it. And people are going to have that broken impression of the PTR, and just nothing good
Right.
comes of that.
Yeah. So I would say goes up this week. Almost has to if if you sort of think about they're trying to hit a March date, I think that's when the book comes out right now.
I hope this is for March. Not gonna lie.
I
I'm
I don't think
I'm angling for end of January, beginning of February.
so. Their
That
PTR
would be
cycles are
two
what
months.
they're like 3 months, right? So they put it up to be in December. December,
Yeah,
January, end of February, beginning of March is like
two
the
to
earliest
three
they do.
months.
Yeah,
3 months. Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. But
I
yeah, I
could
mean,
see
I'd
raid
say
release in March. I just want to see the patch come out before that. Like if we get the patch 2 weeks, then Heroic comes out, then Mythic comes out. I could see Mythic coming out at the beginning of March
yeah.
is what I would like to see, and then like the patch itself coming out sooner.
hmm Yeah, I mean, we'll have to. I mean, it definitely PTR this week, but I think patch wise, like February patch release is going to be tight with the holidays. I think
Yeah,
because
I mean it's
it's
the holidays that really throw a wrench in things, and if not for the holidays, I would be like 100% this is coming out in February. But yeah, because of the holidays, because of the fact that they're probably losing 2 weeks of work just on holidays.
just for
Um,
like Christmas and New
just
Year's.
Christmas and New Year's, people taking time off deservedly, like they should, um, does mean that they're not working during that time and not going to be
Yeah,
progressing towards patch release during.
no, that's true. That is true. So, but I guess speaking of patch release, a couple of things came out, I think, in the last week. So on 9.2, some interesting stuff. So the first thing is that they are actually adding unlockable flying to Zereth Mortis, which is the new zone or area. So we'll eventually be able to fly. I think they actually said it's going to be a part of that. What is it? The knowledge thing that
Yeah,
the cipher of the first one. Sorry.
yeah,
So
that's gonna
it'll
be.
be a part of that.
It's so awkward going to Korthia and not being able to fly when you can fly literally everywhere else. Like Korthia in the mall, you just can't fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really annoying.
So it is the mall. It is the fun stuff they've made. But yeah, so we'll be able to fly in Zereth Mortis, which I think is really cool. Um they also WoW had data mined some additional stuff, some strings, like some like translation strings and things like that around mouse over and click bindings being added to the base UI. So
I've
this will
been
be interesting.
using.
So
Oh, go
oh
ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say, like, so click bindings are essentially there's an add-on called Click, CLIQUE,
Yep.
which essentially allows you to bind spells to like your right mouse button, left mouse button, middle click, just basically to like your mouse buttons. So you can like cast a spell if you like right click a raid frame or right click a player frame. Um, and so Blizzard is now adding that to the base UI, which is cool. They're also adding mouse over buttons, I guess, or some way
Yeah.
to do mouse over. It's a little bit easier than through the macro system they have. So you can now do like put your mouse over a raid frame and like be able to cast a spell without clicking the player first, selecting them, and then casting them. So,
Right. Yeah.
um,
I'm a huge fan of click bindings in particular. I use those a lot for just like random utility. Like on my Brewmaster, left click on a raid frame is Tiger's Lust. And I use that all the time. I use that multiple times a fight, every fight. Um, and when I'm playing a healer, like my Holy Den, Wog, and well, actually all of my healing buttons are on. I just click. I just click. My damage
yeah,
buttons are on my like action bars. Damage buttons and CDs.
yeah, yeah. So it'll be good to have this as a part of the base UI. I think this is like a really, really cool change that they're going after, which is nice. Um, So yeah, so that's sort of some of the two I think big things, and then the other thing that was data mined, which I actually wanted to spend a little bit of time here. I know we didn't say this up front, but they data
Okay.
mined basically the season 3 Mythic Plus mount, which is basically
Yeah.
a recolor of all the other seasons. However, it is the coolest recolor. So it's actually a red tinted elemental death elemental thing. And I think it looks super cool. So that's coming out in season 3, but they also so and I think you're gonna throw it up here. So I think yeah, this is sort of like the coolest looking mount or seasonal Mythic Plus mount they've put out. I think it's much better than the base gray one. That tealish one they put out in season 2 is gross. Didn't look too much different, but this looks awesome for red. So I think super cool mount they're putting out for season 2 or sorry, for season 3 Mythic Plus reward. I'm getting KSM or Keystone Master. The other thing though is they're adding a ton of mounts. I've been sort of following along with like Wowhead and sort of what they're putting out there, but there's like something like five or there's literally I went back to the news over the past 2 weeks and there's like 5 or 6 posts about a different set of mounts coming out. And so
I hadn't seen most of
um
these. Wow.
yeah, there's like a bunch of them just to sort of click through. I mean, some of them look cool, some of them don't, but they're all so
There's
they're sort
bug
of
mounts. There's a proto like partially mechanical variant of the N'Zoth Mythic mount,
yep,
um,
yeah.
which is pretty standard. They will usually have like whatever boss. I think the only boss that has a mount that has never been reintroduced as a model for another mount is actually the Argus one, um,
Oh
the
yeah.
horror dog.
Did did they ever redo the Black Hand one, which was the Scorpion, the mechanical Scorpion?
I don't know
Was
if
that
they
a
specifically did
Mechagon?
that one, but there's a scorpion from the guild stuff from Cataclysm.
Oh, you're right. Yep, that would have been the same model. Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
Um, yeah, we've got what is this a mechanical gopher?
I don't know. It's like a progenitor, like yeah, like some sort of Vombata, I think it's called. Yeah,
This is so you remember the Albuck mounts from TBC, which were like some of the most popular mounts, just like period,
yeah,
for a long time. They didn't get used a ton because they were ground mounts and everywhere you could fly, which is part of the reason that they did push back towards ground only stuff in quad. But this is like a new version of the Talbuk mounts that looks amazing.
yeah.
Definitely going to be seeing some use from these.
Yeah, and a lot of these mounts too are they're not just like random drops. Like some of them are from like I guess as a part of the new zone, you can actually like craft these mounts almost
That's
through
neat.
like the new like cipher system. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
if you're a mount
actually
collector, it's cool.
that's actually really neat that it is something that is going to be so. This is what I want to see from like a zone progression kind of system where like it's not something that I need for raid. It's not
Yeah,
something that
no.
I need to hop on and I have to do for raid. But it is something where like if I want to go and spend time on it and get these mounts because I do want those like Talbot mounts. Like the Talbot mounts are some of my favorite mounts. Um,
Yeah.
I could go and do that.
Right.
So that's cool.
Yeah,
It,
not and not feel like you have to. Yeah, like you said,
right.
like not feel like you have to log in and grind it and yeah. Yeah.
Kind of on that note, and a little bit tangential. I know we have a lot to go through today, but I want to mention this. I've been doing Torghast some on my hunter to get their soul centers to make a legendary, and it's amazing how much different it feels when it's not like on a weekly lockout. Because like
Yeah.
I tried to do a 12 and it took me like 45 minutes. I had some really bad luck in terms of like which elites spawned together, like the double caster packs with a 24-second kick cooldown are not nice.
Yeah, they're
Um,
rough.
but because I like there wasn't this weekly quota that I was trying to get, it was like I can just go and do a 10 that I can do in like 15 minutes. And I don't have to worry about like maxing out my soul cinders gain from the week by doing a 12, so I don't have to suffer through this like awful plus 12. I can just go and do a 10 and do like one more to make up the soul cinders difference. And just like
That's
not having that weekly cap that you have to do both 12s um makes it actually feel like you can go and do those lower ranks and still get value from it.
yeah, I did the same thing on my shaman. Like I tried to do a 12, literally failed on like floor 2 after
Yeah.
like 30 minutes. I was like, this is stupid. So I like dropped down to I think nines and like did just ran nines until I had enough soul cinders to get like the 262 legendary. Turned on
Yeah.
like Arcana, like watched some TV while I was
Yeah.
sort of just grinding out. It
Yeah.
was like it was very chill. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I think it's weird, like, and that's what I think the idea of stuff like this is that I realize why Blizzard gates it, but they gated Torghast in such a weird way where like
Yeah.
it would have been cool even if like you had like a Soul Cinders cap or like whatever the currency
Like their
cap out of
weekly valor
Torghast
cap
was.
kind of thing would have been a lot better.
Exactly. Yeah, we said like a Cinders cap and like you couldn't go over it, but if you wanted to run like nine nines in a row versus like 112, you could do your nine nine. Like hopefully it wasn't
And
that
it's
bad,
actually
but
so if you look at the scaling on soul centers, is actually so you get 250 for doing a 10, you get 350, I think it is, for doing a 12. So
Yeah.
instead of doing two tens is 500, two 12s is 700. So if you do three tens, you get more soul cinders than doing two 12s. Um,
Yeah.
so it's not even like that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like one extra run, which is like, yeah, nothing. So no, I mean, I think, yeah, Torghast has definitely been very nice without the cap on it. So that's for sure. Um, so cool, but yeah, tons of mounts, tons of cool, like weird, like not weird progression, but I think like non-power based progression in the zone, which I
Yeah,
think they need that. To be fair, I think they need that for two reasons, right? Like number one, it helps like raiders not have feel like burnt out about doing the same thing over and over and over again, or having to go in there and grind it out. And I
yeah,
think it also helps. I'm not going to say casuals, but people who do not min max or don't raid, because it'll alleviate like the stress of going into that zone. If you
yeah,
think about it, like before, like if you were a raider, like you'd have raid groups camping rare spawns, and like if you were the type of player that like you didn't care about raiding, but you still played the game because you wanted to like collect everything, or you played it a slightly different way, right? Like you are now competing with a group of people that are doing like a very like min maxy thing, and you're just trying to like chill through the zone and like
yeah,
have a little fun. So I think in that regard, it probably like helps them out where they're not competing for spawns or like competing for
yeah,
something, with like a very coordinated group of people who are doing this because they need to get it done like in this fashion to be the most efficient and, you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
yeah, get the power needed. So
It is also like um, the real end game in WoW, as in every MMO, is transmog. Like it's just a fact. It
it's
is.
true.
It's transmog and it's mounts. It's looking cool. Is the real end
Yeah.
game. And so having the end reward of doing the cipher stuff be these really cool mounts is honestly great.
Oh
As
yeah.
compared to like Porthia, you don't. The only mount that you get from like there's a mount from the Death's Advance vendor. There isn't one from the Archivists, I don't think.
Mm-mm.
And there's a mount for completing the meta achievement, which requires doing both reps, but
Yeah.
um, so it's not like
There's not a
not
ton
even the same
cosmetically.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be fun. I'm more I think I'm definitely excited because it's new, but I'm also excited that like it'll be the first time we get a zone like I guess even Mechagon wasn't really like this because there was some power associated with doing that, wasn't
yeah.
there?
There was the
Um
essences.
yeah.
Essences were the main one, and then there was the punch cards, which was basically only
Oh yeah.
relevant for tanks, because the red
Oh
punch
yeah.
card you wanted to get a high level red and yellow punch card to put in your cyclotronic, so that you would have a max eye level cyclo. Um, I still feel a little bit sad that there are people out there in the world that have a higher eye level cyclo than I do, just because I will never be able to get a Titan Forge punch card. But yeah, and
You'll be
then
okay.
the Mechagon dungeon itself had like the stupid bracers for me.
Yeah. That's fair. So yeah. It's been a while since we got like a purely just like cosmetic
Yeah,
island zone thing. So,
but even
you
then,
know,
like there wasn't that much that most people needed to do in Mechagon for power. Like you would get your rank 3 essence by getting to exalted there, which kind of sucked. To be
yeah.
totally honest, it kind of sucked. But um, once you did that, you know that was it, and only a few people had
Yeah.
to do that because only a few people play tanks.
It's true. That is true. Um, but cool. So no, so I think yeah, tons of mounts in this new zone. New zone seems pretty cool. So in terms of like the stuff that's there. The other, I guess the other big news before we get to the interview, last piece is there we did the Wowhead did data mine essentially the 11 raid bosses. So I don't think I'm gonna read through them. Because there is a couple of maybe spoilers or maybe
I'm
what
gonna
have
pull
you,
it up
but
on the stream. If you're watching and you don't want spoilers, you can just like look away for like 30 seconds.
yeah.
It's not gonna be up very long, but if you do want, like, we already know the big ones. We know the jailer's there, of course.
Yep.
We know Anduin is there, of course. There's a few other ones that people might be interested to see. Um, there's one in there that people, I'm sure, are. I already know some people in guild that are very um, they got PTSD from Castle Nathria, and they're not looking forward to running it back.
I hope it's the
Um,
same fight. I wish it's the same fight. It's just the exact same fight. Love
that
it,
would
love it.
be hilarious, and also
Be a
the
huge
fight was
fan.
good. The fight was good. So
That's the fight.
I
That's the
would
fight. To
be
be fair, other than Council, that was the fight we wiped to the most on farm in Nathria. Was just
yeah
because at a certain point your DPS got so high that your timings were all off. So there was like
yeah.
you got to a part where
It
it's
was
just
that
like,
awful intersection of like the Painsmith like personal responsibility stuff
yeah,
with the remnant like push timer nonsense of like
yeah.
every week your push timers were different.
It
It was
was it
miserable,
was
but
great
it was
getting it was
great.
great getting. I guess we're gonna ruin it, but it was great when you would get an ability you needed to use. You needed an ability to happen before one ability, and if they happen in the reverse order,
You were just dead.
all hell broke loose. All hell
Yeah,
broke loose.
yeah,
So, um, but yeah, so they released it. It'll be 11 bosses, which is cool. Maybe, and also they data mined a potential world boss. Um,
yeah,
so new world boss, which I think probably we're expecting just because of the new zone.
yeah,
But yeah, so 11 bosses. I guess we can jump into the interview, and I wanted to actually start with the section around the raid design.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know if you did. I actually watched Max's reaction to this
I
to
did
the
as
interview.
well. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
for
it's
reference, this interview we're talking about, just to recap, this is an interview with Morgan Day from a channel called The Starting Zone, or a podcast called The Starting Zone. Episode number 488, so a little bit older than ours.
slightly.
Uh, but yeah, they talked about gear progression, raid design, zone design, a whole bunch of stuff. So we are going to hit some of the highlights. Wowhead has a whole write up, and they've got a link to the VOD if you want to go and check that out. It will be posted in our show notes. So if
Uh-huh.
you're listening to this, you can go and check the show notes on your podcast app or your, on the website itself and get a link to it.
Yep. Yeah. So all in all, I guess I wanted to start with sort of the raid section, but to be fair, the interview itself is really good.
Yeah,
Across the board, the two folks who sort of run the starting zone, which I guess their names are Spencer and Jason, asked some actually really really good questions to Morgan, and I think if people remember at the start of what was it 9-1 Morgan's interview then with maybe it was Sloopbag at the time did not go over well from a community perception, but I think here Morgan, I mean, Morgan is it seems like a very good dude, very good designer, so his answers and sort of the interview questions themselves are really good. So yeah, so I definitely recommend watching the whole thing, but yeah, I watched Max's sort of reaction to it. And the The best part about Max's reaction, which I think was cool, is that like his entire point, like going through this video, was like, I think they should ask this, and then like the next question out of like the interviewer's mouth was
was that
exactly
one?
What Max would say, or like, hey, they should answer it this way. So in general, Max, if you care about rating and care about Max's opinion, I mean, he's also I think on the same page. With these guys ask some really good questions. So the um the takeaway though from a raid design perspective, which I think was interesting, is that the good news is we probably will not see an encounter as long as Sylvanas. The Zoval or
Yeah.
the Jailer will not be as long. Somewhat shorter. However, how much shorter it'll be out we'll see. I mean, I expect probably the last boss to be about a 10 to 12 minute encounter anyway.
Yeah, 10 minutes is a
But
good like length, and I really think that like Denathrius being an example of just like an encounter that ends at 10 minutes, whether you are ready for it or not,
yeah,
is just like a good way to do it. Like Denathrius will kill you at 10 minutes unless you kill him first. That's how it goes. We had like one of the
exactly.
world's longest kills for our first kill when we had like 10 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that, because we had Necrolord Shaman, and so they like died and onked and then triggered the higher mirror 10 seconds of invulnerability thing and just like lived and killed the boss, and a rogue that did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's at least they got ahead of that. So we won't see another Sylvanas like 15-minute or Shah Fear 24-minute level of
Yeah,
encounters. The other thing too that they talked about, which I thought was interesting, and Morgan actually went into this a little bit, was the effect that cooldowns have on raid design. and like the
This is
available
really
damage
interesting.
cooldowns. Yeah,
Yeah.
so basically, like the idea was is that we talked a little bit about this about like the reasons teams would hold DPS, and uh in Nathria it was more from a timing perspective. Like you'd hold damage because you get better timings from a fight perspective. In SOD or Sanctum, it shifted from that to more of a you held DPS for not only timing but also for cooldowns, right?
Right.
Because of how strong certain cooldowns are, particularly druids and their cooldowns, Moonkin specifically,
Yeah.
um, sort of held it based on that. And so the team, at least the encounter design team, is taking that in count as they look into this raid, so
I
that
do
we
think
sort of get
it's
away from that. But
I think it's really interesting that the analogy he used was Tomb of Sargeras, colloquially known in the community as Tomb of Soakgeras because of
yeah,
just every boss having a
every,
soak mechanic that you
and
would
rogues
like
being
put a
so
rogue in
good.
it and then the mechanic didn't matter anymore.
Yeah,
On top of just like rogues being generally good at the time, that made them just like incredible. So that's kind of the Boomkin situation right now, where like every fight has a part that you could extend pretty much indefinitely in order to make you have uh, the Venthyr Boomkin cooldowns or 3 minute healer CDs or anything else really um, happen at a time that's advantageous for you. Kel'Thuzad is the biggest example of this by far, where like the
yeah,
strategy for that was you drop all of your healing CDs and you literally extend each phase one as long as possible in order to get your 3 minute CDs up for the next set of spikes.
yep,
Uh, but there's also stuff like we still stop DPS in phase one on Paintsmith, so that we have our 2 minutes up for the first set of ads. So we basically stop DPS in phase one so that we get more DPS in phase two, and that's not as big, but it's still like
like
I
a
don't know.
minor, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so they talked a lot about that, and the interesting thing, which Max brings this up in his video, but I sort of would have said the same thing, is that Blizzard always overcorrects, like, almost too hard in certain cases.
Yeah,
So, like, you almost expect them to take a really hard look at their fights with this sort of idea of holding raid cooldowns or extending phases to allow cooldowns to come back up, be, like, a very central focus in the way they, like, design these fights.
yeah.
Um,
I do think that um, they swung too hard in the direction of percent based, like boss HP based pushes.
yeah.
When you have a boss HP based push, you can control that, and controlling that becomes a little mini game that a lot of people, including myself, don't find particularly fun because it just leads to a lot of frustration. Like if somebody gets lucky, then suddenly you push too early, versus like a few people get unlucky and then suddenly you push too late. Um, it's just like it is okay in small quantities, but this past couple tiers have had it in large quantities. Council of Blood and Stone Legion Generals being like, and Artificer actually to an extent being like
Yeah.
really big examples from Castle Nathria, and then this tier having Remnant just be a constant source of pain because the timers change every week because our damage changes every.
Yeah.
Um, So I do think it would be good if we went a little bit more towards the "this is happening, you better be ready for it" kind of
Yeah,
kind of
regardless, yeah.
timers, which are a little bit more brittle in the sense that if they miss the mark and people aren't, like if a average raid team just can't make that timer, you know, it's really rough. Like Sire
Yeah.
Demetrius was famously like really well tuned and didn't get a single nerf until very late in the tier, and then got a nerf that basically cut like 30 seconds off of the final burst.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Which is like, yeah, which is, yeah, I mean, we'll see what they actually end up doing for this, but, I mean, Blizzard, I think is I mean, to be fair, they mentioned Tomb of Soak Garrus, but, like, there has not really been a soak mechanic, and if there have been, there's been one a tier since that
yeah,
instance,
they've
right?
had a little bit
Like
more coordination about that. Yeah, we've had in this tier we had the Sylvanas Merciless soaks on Mythic. I'm trying
right.
to think what other soaks we had. Do we
There's,
have any others?
there's not many room-based soaks. So
Yeah,
there's the 9 has them,
right.
but I
But
can't
you can
remember if
just
anything.
split. That's like a
Yeah,
meteor
and
mechanic. You can just split it.
No, I'm talking about the purple circles.
Oh, the purple circles. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Enerva had it with her bouncy things.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
like, those were things you could do with one person anyway. They weren't like so the thing about Tuma Sogaris was, like, these were, like, meteors you that were at a specific point in the room that you had to soak with multiple people to split damage.
Okay. That's
And
true. Yeah.
that's why rogues were so good is because you could cloak it and take 0 damage. So, there haven't been many of those type of things. A lot of it's been more player targeted, yeah, like the
Yeah.
even like the Kel'Thuzad, like the bomb, I guess you could say
Yeah.
type
You
soaks,
like
right?
somebody gets it, they move on to the group and you split it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or they go
Yeah,
off and they hit, turtle or ice block or whatever. Of-
yeah, Munit, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so they talked a lot about that. I guess the other big thing too that I that sort of popped out to me was that Morgan talked about this one being the largest raid they've ever done with like flight points taking you to different portions,
I
which
so
which scares
that
me for two reasons, right? Well, like, well, it scares me, number 1, I think, because of what happened in SOD and the fact that, like, they did
uh-huh.
really bad shortcuts. Like, they did really bad, like, when you died, where you'd spawn, depending on where the boss was, is, like,
Yeah. Shout
sometimes
out
it's
to
like
the 3 minute run back from Painsmith. If you don't have a warlock and you gotta have a healer run back, even if you have a quick healer, you got like a shaman. It takes like 2 minutes, 2 3 minutes for them to run back. So like if you don't have a warlock, you're just losing half of your raid night to waiting for people to get back to the boss.
yeah. Yeah, so there's that, and then the other thing too is that, I mean, it would be cool if it's that big, but then I'm thinking about, like, alright, is this raid really gonna be bigger than, like, an older raid like Uldir? Or sorry, yeah, no, Ulduar.
I mean, yeah,
Wrong,
Ulduar
wrong.
or Antorus. Antorus was very big.
Yeah, I actually just ran it in Taurus, to test, like, how they changed the scaling.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but yeah, if it's gonna be that big,
I think it is going to be that big. It's just gonna not be that big in a way that matters. Like if you put it on
yeah,
the map next to the other ones, it's gonna be bigger, but it's not gonna be bigger in a way that the players actually really experience. Like there's gonna be a flight point, but a flight point is just a teleporter with a fancy animation.
yeah.
Um, so it
Which
isn't
I
really
hope
meaningfully bigger. It's like saying that we have the biggest, tallest elevator in any game ever, and it's just an elevator that you get in and it just goes for like 5 minutes. And like, sure, biggest elevator in any game ever,
but it doesn't do
but it
anything, yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm hoping the way this works is that you actually do get to traverse some of this stuff first on
Yeah.
foot, and then you unlock the sort of the shortcuts, but we'll see.
Or that there's like
Um,
a bunch of hidden stuff in the raid zone itself that like you can go back in on a partially cleared instance and like go exploring.
yeah,
If there's like a zone within the zone kind of thing going on there, something like stuff like the SSC lurker below thing, where you're like, oh, you can fish up this like boss, except ideally not an actual boss that drops raid loot, but
yeah,
fish
yeah,
up a
yeah.
rare that you can go in and kill and get like a transmog piece.
Be interesting. Be like the old like we explored Mount Hyjal the night that we unlocked it. We went in and killed trash for a little. We killed the first boss and then the trash never stopped spawning. I guess there was a way
Yeah.
to glitch it, and we farmed rep in there,
Oh
which was
man.
fun for like 8 hours
Yeah.
overnight. Anyway, and so yeah, so sort of we'll see how big this is, how that sort of traversal stuff works. But yeah, talking about the biggest raid ever. Interesting. And the other final thing they talked about a little bit was the Anduin encounter, um, and the fact that it's going to be super epic. And during this portion of it, Max made an interesting point, which I kind of agree with, in that, like, if Blizzard was really thinking about a 9-2 and a 9-3, right? Max's point was Anduin was probably the end boss of 9-2, with the jailer being the end boss of 9-3. So now that they're
Yeah.
smashing it together, one of the
We had two
reasons
end
that they're
bosses.
yeah, one of the reasons they're doing this sort of like time gating thing where you only get to defeat up to Anduin week one, and the rest of the bosses end up week two is because they put so much time into Anduin in terms of like his fight. Um, and yeah, so it I mean, if Anduin is as epic as they talked about, basically talking about him being another end boss in the raid,
Yeah.
um, it'll be fun. It'll be weird to have that sort of like I'm not gonna say like anti-climax, right? But like if Anduin ends up being the better of the two fights, it'll actually kind of be a downfall. We'll end up with a similar
Yeah.
um situation is like the second half of after Painsmith
Right.
of SOD, right?
Yeah. Like Painsmith is the real end boss of this tier, and
Yeah.
Sylvanas also is in the raid and is a difficult encounter, but Painsmith is the real end boss of this tier.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the boss we kill last on farm now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was an interesting take and probably makes sense with sort of Anduin as a character. The other sort of tidbit here that came out was that their Blizzard is talking internally about not testing the last three bosses at all. Definitely not the last boss. Like talks particularly about Zoval, never testing him at all on PTR. But then also about the other three, like what would that be? The ninth, tenth, the ninth and tenth bosses.
Yeah.
The other two, sorry. Not on PTR.
Whew. I mean,
Um,
they gotta get their internal testing team a lot more support if they want to do that. This is not Final Fantasy where like all of the jobs you can estimate their damage with a single spreadsheet and like know
yeah.
exactly they're gonna fall within this band and they're gonna use their CDs like this and they're gonna do this much damage. Um, that is not how WoW works.
No. So that'll be interesting. I mean, what again, sort of the overcorrection of Blizzard, like you would almost assume that these final bosses, like Anduin included in this, are going to be hard out of the gate regardless. Like Blizzard will never repeat another like Guardians, Fate Scribe, Kel'Thuzad situation. Like when they asked the question about Kel'Thuzad specifically, like Morgan's face, just like literally, dude, like rolled his eyes, just like, oh, like I think Blizzard as a group, as a team, like their WoW team realizes like Kel'Thuzad was like a huge screw up,
Yeah,
and
it
I don't
was.
think yeah.
Altazad was like a screw up on multiple levels. Like it was too easy, but it was too easy because the way they do the fight was a really dumb and not fun strat. So not only was it too easy, but it wasn't fun to do. Um, because the way you did it was this really awful stop DPS and wait, sit there and go AFK strategy for minutes at a
Yeah.
time, and like it just it wasn't fun. It had all this neat callbacks to like the OG Naxxramas Kel'Thuzad that really got lost in the whole okay stop DPS kind of
Right.
like overriding thing that people are going to remember Kel'Thuzad from Sanctum for.
Exactly. Exactly. It didn't even have like the best mechanic of original Kel'Thuzad, which was the little. This is sort of minor, but it's the one I always loved. Was like there used to be like purple beams that would spawn under players, and after 3 seconds, it would just kill you if you didn't move. You didn't even have that mechanic, which is just like, come on now. But no, yeah, I mean, and I think I said this when we did it when we talked about this. Like Kel'Thuzad's the worst second to last boss we've ever done. Like I would say it's worse than Stone Legion, and the only reason, and hear me out, is that while the fight worked perfectly, it was awful to do. Like Stone Legion Generals had a bunch of bugs, had some interesting things, but was still like you'd laugh about wiping to like a quad like blade hit because the winds were going as the blade came out, and one person just hits like 5 times by the single
Yeah,
blade that tries to hit them. Like you'd laugh about that. It would suck, but like Kel'Thuzad was never enjoyable to
I
do.
I think that Kel'Thuzad now is actually pretty good. Like if it had gone online like it is now, it still would have
Yeah,
been too
yeah.
easy, but it would have been fun.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair. That's fair.
and that's like I never had fun doing Stone Legion Generals, and some of that is just the like stress of trying to keep a raid team going.
Yeah.
And Stone Legion Generals being like a big fucking roadblock in the way of doing that, in a way that Kel'Thuzad is not. So I get to enjoy Kel'Thuzad in a way that I could never really enjoy Stone Legion Generals. But
Gotcha.
um, I did. I would still call Stone Legion Generals worse, even though I did, have the mostly fixed version to do. It just was never fun to do.
Yeah.
It was long. It was actually not that much longer than thought, but it was long. It was frustrating. It had all the push type of nonsense that we hate. It just like the healing immunity, stupid fucking ads, the
It was only
wins.
80%. The wins were fine.
I mean, the wins were fine if you had people that could either like cleave things down evenly, so you just killed all three of them at the same
Uh-huh.
time, and you got the triple wins for like 3 seconds and then they died. Or if you had people that could keep it in their pants and not do a bunch of AoE cleave because it's like, you know, free for them to do in their rotation, and kill them one at a time, so you didn't get the triple wins. But then when you have like a meteor come out and you get a double wins in the middle of the meteor, and the entire raid group gets pushed out of the barrier, and 3 people die.
All right, fair enough, fair enough.
Like
I
I
still,
understand that it's like you can play around that, but it didn't make it like not frustrating to wipe 8 minutes into the fight because of that.
yeah, that's understandable, understandable. I think we just two different opinions on that fight because I
Yeah,
didn't find it that bad. um, but so cool. So that's sort of on most of the raid stuff. In terms of like what they talked about. So I mean, I would expect that this raid coming up. I mean, Blizzard's going to put their heart and soul into it. Like I
yeah,
said, like we said, they sort of overcorrect in a lot of cases, and I mean, you can expect, particularly if you're watching the race for world first, which is where a lot of this will happen. Like lots of very difficult fights, and hopefully hopefully they're able to do the whole not putting the final 3 bosses on PTR, because to be fair, like
yeah,
other than like Stone Legion, right? Like even the past couple of tiers, there haven't been a lot of game breaking bugs, like bugs that just fights don't work or like that are totally off, right? A lot of it's just been like bad fights, right?
yeah.
But like
Or
other than
fights with like
Stone
something you
Legion,
can do to like cheese the strategy, like Kel'Thuzad.
exactly, yeah,
Or the initial version of Sylvanas where you could like not kill the Colossus and just like do a bunch of extra Sylvanas damage, which
yeah,
they hotfixed in the middle of it.
yeah,
Kel'Thuzad's issues were a little bit more fundamental. Fate Scribe's a little bit more fundamental, but yeah,
right. So, but no, so it was so looking forward to the raid. Um, I don't know. Do you want to talk about some of the zone stuff? Because I think we've talked a lot about the new zone even today. I think the only sort of like highlights there are essentially the Cypher the First One system, which is
yeah,
the zone progression system that they talked about. Basically starts open week one. You can jump in there, and there is no player power bound to it. That was sort of something Morgan said in the podcast, or sorry, in the interview.
yeah.
So and sort of we reiterated that earlier today. It's all about exploration, collection, that type of stuff. And so they compared it to they compared Cypher the First Ones to the Torghast box of many things, where
Yep.
like the talent tree you get, eventually the idea is you'll unlock everything, but as you do stuff in the zone, you will gain a currency or some sort of item that you can then
I
use to get talents, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it. I like how the box turned out in Torghast. It ended up there's like a bunch of talents, and like I would say 50% of the talents in that box don't really do anything. Um,
Right.
but then the other 50% are like really big and impactful, and you feel them, and it's like okay, like the 50% that are kind of nothings are made up for by this like 50% that are awesome. Like the auto loot thing that's on the first row is actually a really nice first row one, and you get at the end where you have like 100% increased empowerment duration, and while you're empowered you do pulsing AoE damage, and while you're empowered you have like a bajillion% extra haste, and
Yeah.
like so you like hit the empowered button and you spend the next minute and a half just walking through the instance blasting. It's actually turned out, I think it turned out well.
Yeah. Exactly. And that they sort of talked about that. They also said that like the idea right now is that there's not going to be any weekly caps on the actual currency you can collect to do your upgrades.
Yeah,
And the idea is that it looks like the idea is that you basically collect this currency to unlock buffs that let you then go and do harder content in the zones. Like
yeah,
while the whole zone might be open to you at the start,
you may
potentially,
not be able to do
um,
all of it.
yeah, it might not be able to kill or sort of even touch any of the mobs without getting these buffs first. So it's a cool, again, a cool way to like release content and sort of, yeah, by it not having player power associated to it, you can do as little or as much as you want, and it doesn't matter if there's a cap or not, right?
Also, without the weekly cap, that's actually like secretly a huge thing, because the thing about weekly
Yeah.
caps, and we mentioned this earlier when I had my digression about Torghast and Soul Cinders. When you've got a weekly cap, you feel like you need to actually like cap it out. Like you have to complete that capped amount, or next week you're going to be behind. And if you want to
Uh-huh.
get a mount or something at the end of it, even if it's just a mount, you still got to go and you got to do the weekly cap, or you're going to just be further off of getting the thing you want. Whereas if there's no weekly cap, if you can just go and do it, if I'm really busy this week, I can just not do it this week. I can just
Right.
go and do it next week when I have, and I'm not falling behind. Like I'm just not spending time on it this week, but it's still going to take me the same amount of time to do, no matter when I sit down and do it. Which is actually like that's good. That's really really good. And I think there's some room for stuff like dailies, where you have a daily thing that you can do, but you can only do it once a day. I think that's okay
Yeah,
in like limited quantities, but when it's like a weekly thing, it actually just ends up being this like stressor for where they're like the game becomes stressful. It becomes like a job because they're like they have this checklist and they have to get it done, or they're a week behind.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So no, the not weekly cap I think is cool for that. And then yeah, I mean it's cool that this is the way the zone's gonna unlock. I'm really excited. I mean, I'm not like I am not a huge transmog person. I will
Mhm.
still gather gear in transmog, right? But like I think I wear like two different transmogs right now, like on
Yeah,
my monk. But I'm a huge mount person. And so like the idea
yeah,
of like there being ability to like, build mounts or like target and like focus on sort of collecting items to then craft a certain mount through this sort of new zone, like I'm all for it. So I'll definitely be spending some time there, just sort of collecting
yeah.
stuff, grinding it out. So
And there
um
is like technically there's a small amount of player power in it. It's not player power that's irreplaceable like the sockets are from, and the conduits especially are from Korthia. Um,
uh-huh.
but with the ability to like make set items there, um, there is something there where that is functionally your bad luck protection comes from that zone. So as a raider, you are going to want to invest some time in it so that you can like complete your set like a week sooner or something. But completing
Yeah.
your set a week sooner is not the same thing as um, never having max eye level conduits because you didn't do Korthia reps.
Exactly. Yeah, and so yeah, that was the other part of what a part of the interview. Speaking of that catch-up mechanic, right? Is they talked about the cosmic flux, I guess, system or currency, right?
Yeah,
Where essentially you can use this cosmic flux, which comes from basically like Morgan said anything. So like it'll come from raids, Mythic Plus, doing world quests, potentially even Torghast.
yeah.
But you use this flux along with the creation catalyst. Sorry, which lets you basically create a tier set piece using gear from either the raid or Mythic Plus. Basically, you can create a specific tier set piece from an existing piece of gear, probably infusing it with Cosmic Flux. So, like if one of the tier set pieces you need is a pair of pants, and you have non-tier set pants from the raid, you can sort of upgrade them to a tier set piece using this system.
They also
Um,
confirmed that it's going to be a fixed set of secondaries on the item.
yeah,
So no matter what item you use to get the set bonus, you will get the actual tier set piece. It's always going to have the same stats. It will never have tertiary stats because they want to avoid the situation with benthic gear where people like raiders were farming pearls to like grind out benthic gear with sockets. Um,
yeah,
so the tier pieces, at least from the zone like catch up thing, are not going to have tertiaries and sockets. Um, I assume we're going to get some way of getting sockets from the zone, maybe. Or maybe they'll just let the Korthia ones continue working on higher eye level gear. That would be great. They removed like the socket. Actually, so the fun fact: the sockets from the Maw continued working in 9.1 if you had a bunch of them in your bags. But you couldn't buy them from the vendor anymore.
they eventually hot fixed that though.
Oh, did they? Okay, yeah.
So yeah, so now there's like a season 1 and season 2 type
Okay, yeah,
moniker
yeah.
on it. So yeah.
I
So
mean
like the
I would like them to just let us keep the socket items the from Korthia. Like they're not that
yeah.
big of a power gain. Just let us like take the time that we invested in getting max rank in Korthia. Just like let that be. Let that be.
Yeah,
We've
like
got
the
a different thing to get from 9.2.
exactly, yeah. Yeah. And so so yes, that was sort of the big thing is sort of that upgrade mechanic. They didn't That's not going to launch with the raids. That'll be sometime Morgan just said later in the
Yeah.
patch. So whether that's like a week later or like 4 or 5 weeks later, more to come there, but
We will know probably
um
when PTR comes up. I
yeah.
expect it's going to be some kind of like weekly quest, story quest kind of time gating, just to make sure
Yeah.
it's not something that the world first raiders and a lot of mythic raiders feel like they need to do. So they'll like
Yeah.
kind of pop up in time for a lot of people to get their like final set piece from it, and then as a system for people to use to get set pieces on their ults.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, so cool little catch up mechanic system. They also talked to, or I guess Morgan talked a little bit. They asked a question about like any sort of like unique loot, sort of like the Sylvanas dagger or like the KT sword that eats other swords.
Yeah.
Morgan just said there'll be something in the raid, but nothing like those two items. So not the focus will be on the tier sets for this
Yeah.
raid. So,
Yeah. I
um,
mean, I'll believe it when I see it because there's been a lot
yeah,
of these items throughout the years that they've done that have ended up a lot more valuable than they expected, that ended up being valuable in ways that they weren't expecting. Like you can look at things like Font of Power. Font of Power
uh-huh.
obviously is like a very good trinket. It saw use all the way through Nyalotha because it just lined up well with certain classes that will not be named, um, and things like that. So and then there's also stuff like they didn't bring up Cruciform Vein Ripper. That is like a solid like 6% of my damage or some shit like that.
Yeah,
From Painsmith. I still have my Cyclotronic trinket in my bag, so I'm going to do a meme kill on Sylvanas at some point with. Um, like I will believe it when I see it. Honestly,
yeah,
they're super bad at estimating the value of some of these effects.
yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Um, But yeah, so that's sort of on the, I think, on the gear side. The only other they touched on a bunch of other stuff. Like I'll quickly hit it. Like Torghast, or sorry, Tazavesh is coming in Mythic Plus in 2 parts, just like Operation Mechagon did. They're adding a new mode to Torghast called the Jailer's Gauntlet, which is going to be more boss rush type thing versus like the endless floors that we got. There think Morgan didn't know for sure, but there might only be one new rank of conduits coming in
Yeah,
9.2. So maybe something there. But the thing I actually wanted to talk a little bit about was about personal loot in the Great Vault. So
yeah,
they spent a couple of questions on this, particularly asking about personal loot specifically. And Morgan's comment was essentially changes to loot rules will be addressed between expansions, not between patches, which basically meant personal loot is here to stay and it'll only be addressed in an expansion level change, which is fair to just stop that question being asked in the middle of the expansion.
yeah,
It just means that whenever they announce 10.0, if 10.0 is coming, that'll be top of mind.
yeah.
The other,
My like second question will be where's Master Loot?
exactly, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
particularly with like these set bonuses, like with the tier sets coming in and the fact that like it drops as an item. So like you can only trade it to other players of your class potentially. And so like
yeah,
as a monk, most times there's maybe one other monk in the raid.
right.
So like,
Are they not
yeah.
doing tier set tokens? They confirm that? Like in
There
Legion.
it was unsure. I thought it was gonna be the way that
Oh,
Morgan
I don't
explained
know.
it in the interview. The
Yeah,
way that Morgan explained the interview was like item drops, you equip it. Now that might just be him
being like
missing the step where
shorthand.
like you create
Yeah,
it, but yeah, it didn't
yeah,
sound like they were going to do tokens. They should,
mm,
but it didn't sound like it. So,
yeah. Um,
um,
but yeah, he also did talk a little bit about like the Great Vault, and here's a quote from the. It should feel like Christmas every reset. It definitely doesn't right now. There's a lot of
no,
like there's a sales community called Weekly Disappointment, and it's called Weekly Disappointment for a reason. And that's the box, the vault. You know, like it is pretty frequent that you just don't get anything from it. So they did mention that they were talking about like giving people the ability to maybe reroll items or something from it. I do think that the Great Vault is definitely an improvement over the weekly box from Mythic Plus box from BFA, but
yep,
definitely still like some room for improvement there. The like fallback reward needs to be better than whatever garbage you can get um from taking the like 3 tokens or whatever the fuck. I have a bunch of those just sitting in my bag because there's nothing good for me to do with them.
yeah. The other things you mentioned around the same conversation, I know that this was from Max specifically in the interview. Somebody mentioned doing similar to the way that Hearthstone. If you ever played Battlegrounds in Hearthstone, where it's like a card battler, and I think all these have it, where you can, or auto battle, or auto chess, I guess was the original name of it. You can
Mhm.
basically, you have to buy units. So like you can re-roll, get a whole new set of units, and you can buy the ones you want. But if you run out of gold to buy and you really want a unit, you can freeze it. Meaning like maybe one week
Yeah,
you get 2 pieces of gear like in the same row that you really want,
and you
but you kind of
freeze
get
one of them and pick
screwed.
the other one.
Yeah, so you freeze it, and basically whatever you
Yeah,
freeze locks in place
I
for
mean
that next
we've
week,
all
and then
had
like
those
you take
weeks.
one.
we've all had those weeks where it's like you have a choice between, your best in slot trinket from a key that you're never going to see again from the box,
Yeah.
and like an amazing weapon from the raid, and you have to choose. You have to pick one,
Yeah.
and the choice with the highest EV is to take the one from Mythic Plus because the Mythic Plus loot table is so big, and you will never see that trinket again. Um,
Right.
but it really feels bad when like the next week comes around and you get nothing, and you just take your 3 tokens of garbage, and feel bad that like last week you had 2 items and can only take one of them. So like freezing actually could be a good way to do that if it's
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, like I think the idea would be is like you have to like just balancing a little bit would be like you can't just freeze and not do anything the next week. It's like if you freeze 2 items from your Mythic Plus cache, it means you have to do at least 4 dungeons at like level 15 or whatever like the item
Or
level was,
I
right?
mean, it takes up a slot in your vault, right? Like if you freeze a Mythic
Right.
Plus item and you only do one key, like you're getting that one item next week on that Mythic Plus row, and that's it.
Right,
Which
right.
means
But
you can't
I
get
was thinking
anything
more of
else. So
like
like,
the oh, sorry.
oh yeah. So like my concern with it would be like, well, what if like you just like freeze the best item, the second best item every week is like a bad luck protection kind of thing. So you're always going to maybe get something as long as there's a second item that is somewhat valuable. But if it still takes up an item slot in the vault, then it reduces the chance that you could get something that's even better.
Well, that's how like the auto battlers work, right? So like
Yeah.
if you're dealt like 5 cards and you buy one and you freeze four, those four are the set the next time you go through and you just get one new one. The idea
Okay.
would be is like if you freeze 3 items and you take one of those three, basically the other 2 items are frozen and you're always going to get those no matter what.
Yeah.
And my thinking was like the only way to balance out would be like you can't just like if you have 2
Yeah.
really good items in your Mythic Plus row, you take one the first week, freeze the other two. You can't just not do anything the next week.
Yeah.
Basically, you still have to unlock those 2 slots so that those 2 items that you froze show up,
Yeah.
right? So, but yeah, no, I mean it would that would be interesting, but I mean we'll see. They definitely seem to like the vault system, so I'm assuming that'll be something that sticks around next expansion. So
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of an improvement, little bit of cool stuff. So
Yeah.
um it's cool. I don't know. Was there anything else in the interview you wanted to sort of go through?
Um,
Sorry.
Not really. I think we covered a lot of it. Um, yeah, I think we covered a lot of the stuff that I wanted to touch on. Um, I think that means that it is time for us to get into actual tier sets because
Yes.
we got the initial version of all of the tier sets. We have a question as well that I want to get to as well for the end of the
Yeah.
episode. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what the Mistweaver and Windwalker tier sets do. So how about we start with those and then we'll talk about the Brewmaster one last.
Cool. Yeah. So we'll talk Windwalker, which I think is the one we both know the least about, but at least I
Yeah.
can explain it. So the 2 piece is essentially Fist of Fury damage is increased by 40%.
Yep, that's
Very
pretty good.
straightforward. More damage on fists. And the 4 piece is after 10 offensive abilities, your next 3 offensive abilities deal an additional 22% damage, which also interesting and probably plays a part in how you then set up your damage, right?
Yeah.
For certain things. So you want to sort of make sure those next 3 abilities that do 22% more damage are your highest damaging abilities, we'll say. Um, so um, so yeah, so there was a write up done by Babs, sort of gave his initial thoughts on the tier bonus, and basically the 2 piece should be very nice bonus to your overall damage. I think Babs puts it anywhere between like 2 and 5% or 2.5 and 5%.
Yeah.
So Fist of Fury, very very solid. The 4 piece, which sort of a lot of questions I think that he had was around just how what constitutes an offensive ability, number one.
Yeah.
So there are like some things that like don't do damage but might be considered an offensive ability. Is only your damage dealing abilities. So we asked a couple of those questions because we haven't had a chance to touch on it.
Right.
However, if his point is that if you can line up those 3 abilities with like Rising Sun Kick, Whirling Dragon Punch, Fist of Fury, 22% is a lot more damage on
Yeah.
those abilities.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, so
Yeah, it is.
the idea is like if you can play it right and you can sort of line up the way that that works, then uh it becomes a very strong damage increase, right, on those two abilities and potentially overall damage. So
Yeah, like imagine Bone Dust Brew does count, and your 10th ability is Bone Dust Brew, and you have all three of those abilities available, and so you like, or you have like Rising Sun Kick, Whirling Dragon Punch, and a Chi proc. You know, you drop Bone
yeah,
Dust Brew, you RSK Whirling Dragon Punch, Dancing Chi, and like, oh boy, oh boy,
you're
like
skyrocketing at that point.
yeah, like that, and you've got Zuin and SCF up at the same time, so you have just all these multipliers going into it. That's a lot of damage. That is a
Yeah.
lot of damage.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be fun to see how that one plays out. I mean, I'm never going to play Windwalker in any sort of competitive nature. So, this seems to me though like potentially just something else you have to track as a Windwalker, which
Yeah,
might be somewhat annoying, but yeah, I mean,
yeah. I mean,
it'll
Billy
be
Zhao
a
in chat going, not a fan of the four-piece tier bonus. Windwalker damage already has high variance off of procs. One thing I like about this is it's not really high variance, it's very predictable, but it is something you do have to track. It's kind of like the spinning crane kick buff where you like, it's not high variance, but you do have to like keep track of it and maintain it in
uh
order to get good value out of it. And
yeah,
Babs is right, there is a lot going on in the Windwalker rotation, even on single target, that you have to like keep track of. Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's the Windwalker stuff. Seems like a lot more damage. I guess we can do Mistweaver next, and then we'll end with
Yeah.
Brewmaster. So Mistweaver, their two-piece is Essence Font's residual healing effect, which is the hot, we're assuming, lasts an additional 2 seconds. So just 2 seconds additional on the hot. And then the four-piece is drinking Thunder Focus Tea summons a progenitor rune of healing, increasing all healing dealt while inside its bounds by 123, 123, which placeholder value.
I'm assuming that's
Um,
a placeholder number
yeah,
because
because
it's
if you
just
go
one,
into
two,
the
three.
buff, it actually states it's 450,
What?
and we don't know. And well, the other thing too is we don't know the way it's applied. If it's a flat healing increase, like you just get
Yeah.
450 additional healing, or we
Dude,
don't know.
imagine 450 extra healing on every single hot tick.
It'd be nice. It'd be interesting. Yeah, particularly with like essence font stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
um, the guide writer here for Wowhead sort of talks through it.
Mm-hmm. The guide
Very
writer here
handsome
for
gentleman
Wowhead.
by Anomaly. No, so when I looked through this and reviewed it and sort of talked to some of the other folks, I mean, the two pieces, whatever. It's an extra 2 seconds. I think it's actually only one additional hot tick the way it'll time out with a
Right.
partial tick. 4 full seconds additional if you pair it with Rising Mist. It's a talent which most Mistweavers are playing anyway. Super, super minor. Like you
Yeah.
get maybe one more Gus proc out of it, double Gus proc, which so whatever. It's
Yeah.
throwaway. Um, the hot healing is negligible on Essence Font anyway. So the four piece though, very interesting. The way that we believe it works, just based on the way the tooltips are written and some of the additional data mining for how some of the spells have hooked together, is that it puts a rune on the ground for 10 seconds that if you stand in, you get this healing buff or you healing increase. So it functions a lot like a mage's rune of power.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so really, really nice. And the fact that it's triggered off of Thunder Focus Tea, which is already a 30-second cooldown,
Means
means
you
you
get a lot
essentially
of it.
have you'll get a lot of this 10-second bonus healing. So it'll be a very nice buff. A lot of it's going to come down to the tuning, right? Like the
Yeah.
current number of 1, 2, 3, or whatever the numbers is, doesn't matter. I mean, if the numbers are good, it will be good. If the numbers are bad, it will be bad. It does slightly change the way you'll play around Thunder Focus Tea. Again, we've had some discussion around what drinking it means. Does it drop the rune when you press the button? Does it drop the
When you
rune when you
consume the
consume the
buff.
buff?
Oh, imagine like then you take the talent that gives you
It
two
won't work.
charges
It,
and you get
it
to
won't
use
work.
both of them.
It won't work. We've they have thoroughly Blizzard. If the one thing they know about Mistweavers is that if you take Focus Thunder and anything procs off of Thunder Focus T will only ever proc once. They'll
Okay.
put an ICD on it. We did this. There was like a legendary buff that we potentially would play in Legion didn't work there. It does. There's a legendary
No,
actually
no, but
here.
imagine they put an
Um,
ICD on it. You push a button, like you put all your hots out, okay? You push a
uh-huh.
button with under focus T up, so you get your rune. Then you stand in the rune and you AFK until the ICD is up. Just drinking in all of that free extra healing. You just don't press any buttons. You just go AFK and you let your tier set and the hots do it. And then you press another button and you get it again for the rest of your hot duration. And now you actually heal
Now,
because there's no more charges. I would like you to understand that there are far worse case scenarios with
true.
Thunder Focus T than it only triggers once. But also that would be awful, and I hope it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, we are as a group, and me also are thinking they'll basically do it by just on either the first
I
button
think
push,
it's
or
gonna be
even
on
if
the
you had two
cast.
charges, you only
Yeah,
get one, right?
I think it
Um,
should go on the cast because then it buffs whatever you cast off of Thunder.
exactly. It just means there is a slight amount of play around we'll have to do. So like
Yeah,
today you just sort of slam Thunder Focus Tea whenever it's off cooldown. Tomorrow with this buff, you'll have to think a little bit more about, am I not going to move for the next 10 seconds? Can I stand still? Which a lot of people are like, well, if you're fist weaving or if you're in melee, you're going to have to move a lot. You don't move a lot in melee. Like there's a lot of like downtime and like the
if you
major
move a lot
movements that you
in melee, then you need to yell at your tank to stop moving. Basically,
it, exactly, yeah. So it's I don't think the biggest thing is going to be is when you have to time it around a boss ability that requires movement, right?
yeah,
Like don't
yeah,
hit Thunder Focus T if Sylvanas is about to cast Veil because you're going to have to move for that, right?
yeah.
Um, so it would kind of even on phase 2 Sylvanas, which has a ton of movement, you'll be able to make plenty use of this.
Yeah,
In
there's
terms
like
of
the
like there's always
daggers in the burns in Sylvanas that require a bunch of healing, and you can basically drop your rune there and just stand in
yeah,
there and be fine.
exactly.
And you're gonna have to
Yeah,
move once for Veil, but you know you can move once for Veil and then drop a rune after, or drop it before and have it time out when the Veil lands, or any number of things.
exactly. So yeah, so 4 piece seems really good. It seems really fun to play around. 2 pieces, I don't. It's whatever. Like you'll
Yeah,
never notice it. You'll never notice it.
yeah.
So
In contrast, talk about the Brewmaster set bonus. Okay, so Larold wrote the summary of this, and I'm going to quote Peony on this, who is one of the Peak of Serenity moderators for Brewmaster. Um, that Larold was less harsh than he would have been. Um, this is a summary that includes the phrase, finally, just to dunk on this tier set's corpse. This is the only tank tier set that doesn't add any damage value at all. It's all defense, except it doesn't even add defense. So, I guess that kind of sets the tone. So the two piece that we're gonna get, targets ignited by Breath of Fire deal an additional 4% less damage to you. This is totally fine. This is pretty serviceable. It's on par with a bunch of the other two pieces. It's actually on par, so Paladin's got a 12% increase to block chance. Despite the fact that 12% is a lot bigger than 4%, blocks don't actually do 100% damage reduction. They do much less than that. So this is actually kind of on par with other two pieces this tier for tanks. So that's fine. It's boring, but it's fine. This does not. There's a lot of people speculating about, oh, what if you play Fallen Order and you like play Spitfire and you get like a bajillion percent uptime and like 3 stacks of Breath of Fire on stuff. And no, the Breath of Fire from Fallen Order actually doesn't even work on raid bosses. It still doesn't do damage reduction even on things that aren't raid bosses, and it almost certainly will not benefit from this set bonus, even if they fix those two issues. So I'm sorry to disappoint. You're not changing talents over this or covenants. Then we get to the 4 piece. The 4 piece is the real stinker. It is Breath of Fire empowers your next Tiger Palm or Blackout Kick, increasing shuffle duration for Blackout Kick and brew cooldown reduction for Tiger Palm by 100%. So, I did the math. Okay, I did the math on this.
the
Well, for
calculator
one,
out.
we can start off by talking about Blackout Kick because that one's really easy. It offers zero value. You have 100% shuffle up time, giving you an extra 2 seconds of shuffle when you press Breath of Fire is not actually an increase in any meaningful way, because you will still have 100% shuffle up time, and going from 100% to 100% is no value. It's bad. Um,
Yeah.
then there's Tiger Palm. Okay, as written, this would amount to an extra cast of Celestial Brew, a button
Oh, nice.
which I remind you has an effective cooldown. Like we press this about once every 30 seconds. It would give you an extra cast of Celestial Brew once every 12 minutes. 12 minutes of active combat time, by the way. So it actually means that even on Sylvanas, which is 14 minutes long, you would not get an extra cast because of how much downtime there is in the fight.
So it does nothing. So
It does
like,
nothing. It does nothing. It
for,
does absolutely nothing. Now, okay, that's not the end of the story because there are other things that can increase the amount of brew cooldown reduction that you get from Tiger Palm. And we are
yeah,
assuming that they work with this set bonus, or would, in theory, work with this set bonus. We can't test it, but we're going to be charitable. Um,
yeah,
so, in the best case scenario, if you are playing the Necrolord, if you're playing Necrolord, and you use um, the legendary that is like the old blackout or facepalm relic from Legion that gives you a chance to
uh
get
huh,
extra brew cooldown when you press Tiger Palm, and you stack those together, which don't do that. Like Necrolord is fine, the legendary is not. And there's one other thing you can do. I don't remember what it does, what it is off the top of my head that you can do to try and like get your brew cooldown
uh
bigger
huh.
off of Tiger Palm. Um, you can get it down to one extra Celestial Brew every 4 minutes
Jesus. So like, yeah,
by
literally does nothing.
completely trashing your damage, like your damage output. Which actually, even if you like, it's bad. It's so bad. Like once every 4 minutes,
Jesus.
if you're using a legendary that is otherwise pretty miserable, like there's just no reason to ever play that legendary. Um, and I mean, I say that somebody in the World First Race used it, so it's not like obviously not unusable. But Brewmaster basically doesn't need any gear or legendaries to be good, so that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
saying a ton. It just like this tier set doesn't do anything. And like of course people are gonna go like, oh, but you have purifying brew. We have a purifying brew about every 5 seconds. Getting an extra purifying brew once every like 2 minutes is not good
Yeah. That's awful. So it sounds like then like you would probably just not even wear the four piece unless the actual tier
unless the
pieces
stats are good.
were
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
which from the data mining they're not. They're a bunch of haste, so we wouldn't wear them.
Gotcha.
Um, so all of these tier pieces, all of them do have the do not translate tag on them that is used for items that are not named, not finished yet.
Yeah, yeah.
So we hope that there will be changes to the tier set,
Yeah.
but this would not be the first time that brewmasters have gotten basically a tier set that doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. Jesus. Rough go.
Yeah,
Rough go. That sucks. Well, I mean, hopefully we see changes and stuff like that. So, for that moving forward. But yeah, that's gosh, I was mad about my two set, not even my four set.
yeah, yeah. In contrast, the prop paladin 4 set uh, gives you a bunch of free judgments when you block, which actually has synergy with your 2 set as a prop paladin, which gives you extra block chance. So they like work together and they give you a bunch of extra judgments, and the judgments translate to extra holy power, which basically means you can be a healer by casting Wog a bunch of extra times because you can already hit 100% Shield of the Righteous uptime.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
can
yeah.
either use it for more damage by just casting Shield of the Righteous, or you can use it to functionally be like half of an extra healer by casting Wog a lot.
That's
Um,
crazy.
so if they don't like, obviously the tier set is not a big enough deal that people are not going to play Brewmaster in the World First Race. They can't plan around having tier sets on their tanks. Um,
Yeah,
they are not going to look at these tier sets and go, "Oh, we can't play Brewmaster because the tier set's bad." But it does mean for someone like me that's going to be clearing the raid several months after the World First Race, that I'm going to be looking at this and going, wow, this sucks. I am not excited about this at all. Mistweaver and Windwalker also look pretty good for next tier right now. So we have a Windwalker on the or we have a Mistweaver on the roster. We might get a Windwalker on the roster. Maybe I play Protection Paladin next. Maybe I
yeah.
play Bear in next year.
Ooh, spicy.
So so yeah, it's It's bad. It's
Yeah,
bad. Uh, we have
rough go. Yeah.
yeah. You wanna hit this last question before
Yeah, we
we
did.
wrap things up?
Yeah, we did get a question from old Billy Zhao. I think it's Billy Zhao actually, or Billy
Okay.
12 ounce. Bill's 12 ounce. Bill's 12 ounce, not Billy Zhao, but it's Bill's 12 ounce. Asked this
Yes.
question. And basically they ask, what do you guys think about having professions be a part of character identity power and identity again, sort of like in TBC? Is it a nod that can tune to make the game more fun or dynamic, or has min-maxing culture made these indirect systems a pain point for character optimization? I'm curious if it's possible to design player power QOL to be sim resistant, which is kind of a different thing.
So
Let
there's
me know if your questions need any clarification. So
yeah, there's two questions here. I would say one of them is the professions bit. The other
yeah,
thing is about it being sim resistant, and bringing back the TBC style bonuses to professions would not be sim resistant at all. It would
yeah,
be um, very easy to math out. You would probably just play the jewel crafting one, and that would be that. um,
yeah,
in
yeah, exactly.
that wouldn't be very much fun because what it would mean is every raiding character um, would just be a jewel crafter, and that
Yeah,
just isn't that's not what people want to do. It wouldn't really be that much different from where things are right now, where a lot of raiding characters are just like engineering and alchemy. Engineering because it lets you use NG res and stuff like that for Mythic Plus, especially, but it
right.
gets you some unique bonuses there, and alchemy for the 2 hour flasks.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, cheaper flasks. Yeah, and I think, I think the piece around having, like, having professions provide an equal level of player power, the interesting part about TBC was that to get those weapons, particularly I'm speaking particularly to, like, the weapons crafting, right? You need to do the raids anyway.
Yeah,
Like, you needed the whatever crafting material that came from those raid bosses, so in many cases,
that's kind of like bad
it
luck
was
protection just through the profession.
exactly. In many cases, it was more potentially at some level of bad luck production in terms of like just getting a weapon eventually. And uh, this was sort of at a time in WoW when I think a lot of what Blizzard was looking at was like using a raid to prop up an individual, right? So this is around the time when you still had like the craftable legendaries, right? Where like you would funnel legendaries to a specific character in your raid, and then that player would be able to leverage it and then help the whole raid do it, right?
Yeah,
Like
although
TBC still had
TBC was drops, wasn't it? Thorthal
TBC was still drops, yeah, but
and
this was
and but yeah, yeah.
but they
I
were
know
still
what you
around
mean
that
because
whole
like
idea of
classic and
like
then Wrath were both classic Wrath and Cataclysm all had the like your legendary you kind of assign who's going to get the legendary in your
exactly, yeah. So yeah, so in that regard, very, very similar there. I mean, I don't think Blizzard will ever go back to a system like this because I think it's gonna require the way that they've designed the game today is that there's multiple ways to be the most powerful at what you do.
yeah.
And the fact like professions just adds another level of that. And so what is the progression through a profession, right? People already complained about the legendaries having a profession component and like the amount of mats needed to craft to like get those up. Not complain, but it was a
I
large
mean,
grind there.
yeah, yeah,
And to do a similar thing with a weapon for an individual, like you'd have to imagine that it would take, the same amount of time. So it would be like a 4 or 5 week grind of material to get enough to make your weapon.
yeah.
And then what happens, right?
I mean, I think they could like give sim resistant bonuses to the different professions. I don't think they will. I think it would need to be things like the engineering bonuses where they all do kind of different things. You know, we still have people debating the
Yeah.
different belt enchants to use for for engineering because they just do things that are just different. There's not one that's
Yeah.
like clearly this is the one that does the most damage. It's like none of them do damage. One of them gives you invisibility. One of them gives you like the rocket jump kind of thing. Um,
Uh-huh.
so they're incomparable, and none of them does damage, and that's what they would need
Yeah.
to do with the profession bonus, and that's a thing that they could do. I don't know that it's worth their time to do. I do think it could be interesting though, but you do run into things where like if you make it a bunch of different defensive bonuses, then you have like tanks playing one of particular the best one. or you have
Right.
like one that's really insane on Sylvanas for whatever reason, one that's really good on Paintsmith. So like your tanks are all playing two very specific professions to cover those differences. Or even worse, something like a rocket jump would just be like you would everybody in your raid would be playing that on Paintsmith.
Yeah, using that. Yeah, yeah,
But so I do think they could. I do think they could. It would need to be the kind of like not damage, not throughput bonuses, but I think they could.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't but I guess the first part of your question, I don't think they'll ever go back to player power based professions, at least in terms of items. Like I think you'll still see the
Yeah,
bonuses, like the little things that you get,
yeah,
but you'll never see like the shield mastery or what was it, mace specialization blacksmiths, right?
yeah,
That can build the best maces, right? Or swords or
yeah.
something like that. So
I actually could see them doing that as a bad luck protection thing. I would think they would want to like do something like you can get an item that drops from raid bosses, and you can buy an item from the auction house, and you take your thing from the auction house and you jam it into your thing from the raid, and it like makes a weapon that is like bad luck protection for you, and it's just a basic weapon. It's just like here's your mythic eye level basic weapon that you get, 8 weeks into the tier if you haven't gotten anything else yet, and if
yeah,
you
but
get an
that
actual weapon from the raid, it's better. But
right. But I mean
it's
that's
something, yeah.
sorry, sorry,
Oh
cut you
yeah,
off. But
go ahead.
I was gonna say that's what like the Great Vault is now. Like
Except
that's
that Great Vault
exactly
doesn't
what.
actually do that because like you can go the entire tier and never get a weapon from your Great Vault.
Right, but that's what it's supposed to be. Like it's supposed to be that
Yeah, okay,
catch-up or
that's
that
that's
like
fair. Like I would rather see them fix the Great Vault to be that than add a whole new profession system to do that.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
true. Yeah.
yeah. That's the current WoW, I think, version of like quote unquote bad luck protection. So, uh, but cool. No, thank you, Billy. I guess it was Billy Azal was asking the question. So thank you for the question.
Right.
So cool. I think that does it for this episode.
Yeah,
Only
I've got
slightly
people that are
over.
pinging me about it's
Eh,
D&D time, so I gotta go and do D&D. You probably gotta go and take care of yourself and or your kids. Hope you
I
feel
do. I
better.
need to blow my nose real bad.
So we're going to wrap up this episode of the podcast. Thank you all for listening. And we will be back here next week, same time, same place, to talk about whatever else has happened. It's probably going to be about the PTR because the PTR is probably going live this coming week.
Hell
So we'll have a
yeah.
lot more information there. Hopefully, new Brewmaster tier set. Maybe suggest some more information about Zereth Mortis. Who knows? Who knows? But we'll be here next week to talk about that. So thank you all for listening. If you want to support this podcast and all the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, we would invite you to come and join the Discord, which is a great place to be. Brew Lounge is, of course, the best location in the Discord. Is one of the best places in the whole like WoW Discord ecosystem to talk about tanking stuff, and just a good place all around. Mist Lounge also exists, but that is going to be our episode today. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.